actually, despite the fact that I ran it, it'd be more accurate. There's a lot of people out there think it's okay. I don't know. I don't know the guy. So we've cut that off. We've left the rubber on it. That old, which is, they're not horrible. They're decent. They're just, the Danes are just so dependable on them. So I've got our heat shrink pre-cut here. And it looks really big. It's actually not, when you spread it into a circle, it's not so much larger than the wire. Drop those both on there right off the get-go. I think we'll put one on each wire instead of both on one. Probably do us more good in the end. So I'm going to run them way down there so the heat don't get to them. Grab us a female end. Whoop. Anyway, our flat blade in our T formation, this is a Dean's or T plug. Our flat blade is always positive, and I soldered to the back side to keep the two wires way away from each other. And then of course your negative pin is off center, so I'm going to solder on that side of our negative and on this side of our positive. And there's the receptacle, and you of course use the female, that way you don't have a male. You'd have two positives hanging out there, and you touch it with a screwdriver or whatever, psst, you just burn your battery up. So, I think most of you guys already know that. Okay, so got our heat shrink on, got our ends both cut away. I'm going to go ahead and cut 1/8 of an inch off of our positive lead here, of our rubber coating, our insulation. There's a lot of wire, so I don't care if I kind of tap into a couple of little bitty strands. I heard it. Plenty of wire left. Again, what I use is, or maybe not again, I'm going to edit this video, but I used Radio Shack brand. Who knows what brand that is, but Radio Shack sells it with their name on it. Silver bearing solder. And this solder job I'm actually forced to use, which is kind of not what I want to use, but the 0.15 gauge, or not gauge, but it's 15 thousandths silver bearing solder. And I'm using a Hako, or Hako. I like the term Hako better for some reason. Soldering station. My iron, it's a really good little iron, Jay. You leave them on all day and all night, and they just kind of sit there waiting for you to beat them up a little more. I always keep, you want to load this up with this silver bearing solder. Get it tinned really well, is the terminology. And you can just touch it to this tab, and it just starts, wow, it just goes right down on there. You just take your little solder and get it on, and lay your hot iron against here. With the solder on it, you kind of reload your iron again. Again, this is not for anyone that knows how to solder. This is for people that wants to solder but are a little bit afraid to, because they don't know, they think they can do this. But I normally use 0.22 solder for this size solder. This 0.15 was all they had this time around, so I got it. But it does fine. It's just a little slower and a little more arduous. It looks like a little hair. But the 0.22 is a little bigger hair. So I've got both these done. I'm going to reheat this tab real quickly to flow this solder. I've got some fresh heat on it. I'm going to use a soldering knife, or that X-Acto knife. You hang on to this plastic for a little while doing this. And it not be... But I hold that right down there while the solder cools, and I've got a massive, massive amount of solder on that blade, and a massive amount of solder right up that. We've got a pretty little thing right there. But on the wire, so I wouldn't just knock that off. I don't want it protruding out of the coating and maybe causing a ground later on down the road. So soldered up very well. We got a large piece of heat shrink on there. A little bit of angle up, kind of gives you something to grab onto, and that is not coming apart. Not with any normal pressure. I mean, you hooked a truck to one end of it, and will come along to the other end or whatever and pull it right off there. But as soon as that's done, as soon as this is done and kind of starting to cool, go ahead and get your end up on there, your heat shrink. That way you don't, as working with your negative side, you don't ground this out. If you do, you've more than likely shot your battery. I've got it returned one to a man right now. Does that very easy. I use a heat gun. Bingo, bango. And if it doesn't go all the way up, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it goes very close. It's going to be very difficult to get in there to ground that. Cross the ground plane, grounding wire. Should go all the way up, but it doesn't have to. So anyway, on the negative side, the blade is a little to the bottom or to one side of the dings. It's not in the center of the plastic, so that goes down and gives you room for your wire to go on top of that. I always, again, I'm going to state this if I haven't. This is this plane, the T part, the top T lid of the T is, if it was a T, is our positive always in the hobby industry. And this thinner portion, I guess the root or the trunk of our T, we'll call it, like a tree, is our negative. So let's put that on. Heat shrink's already on the wires we demonstrated a moment ago. I'm taking a lot longer. Usually this would have been done, or I've been on a third one of these right now, but for everyone else's benefit, we're going to do this little teaching thing that maybe might teach one person, or two, or three, or half a dozen. It might be of value. So I'm clean. I've got a sponge over here on my Heiko iron where I clean my tip. You want to clean that old dead solder off there. And spin it, reload it. Both sides, all the way around if you can. It takes a minute with this little baby fine hair of solder. It don't take but a second. When you load that tip up, you touch this blade on this T-plug or Dean's plug. That thing's loaded. So you make sure you tin your iron good with the solder. Load it up. Keep your iron loaded. It's so important for this kind of stuff. And there's other things where you want to load your iron light just for a certain contact point, but you're still loading it to the point you're contacting. If not, you're going to have a much harder time flowing the solder. Kind of like it fluxes or draws itself to itself. Yeah, these are layman's phrases. I'm not an expert solderer by any means, but I can put a Dean's plug together, and hopefully some other people will be able to too, and have confidence in their welds. But the silver bearing solder is great. It don't dry very quick. It stays wet for a while. Can't get hold of my knife. I'm getting a little heat on there. But yeah, once you know that you're done, it's done. That's done. We're going to put the heat shrink up on there. I may set this to the side and let it cool a minute. But yeah, we've got two strong leads on there, and all we got left to do is push our heat shrink up on there. And actually, it's cool enough. There's no reason to put that away. Actually, there may have been, but it's too late now. It was pretty hot. So that's got the heat shrink. Grab my heat gun, and I always drop in the floor. Finished secure Dean's end or T-plug. Thank you for watching. I hope that that's been informative. I'm Jeffrey at X Aircraft USA. Hopefully we'll be making more videos for you for all kinds of purposes that may be helpful. Thank you.